The dismissed manager was sitting behind his desk for what one might presume was the last time. Next to him stood the same girl as last time. "Where are your 3 candidates?" said the assistant. The dismissed apologized. 2 of them could not be present. One had had his throat slit in a knife fight the previous evening. Where number 2 was, he couldn't say. It was possible he'd had a relapse. Pitt de Trois didn't want to know what kind of relapse it might be, but he did want to leave. "So who is your 3rd candidate, then?" he said angrily. "Why, it is the girl here beside me, of course. She's been helping me with all kinds of things for a few years now. I must say, she's a clever one." "For God's sake, I can't very well have a 12-year-old latrine manager, can I?" said Pitt de Trois. 14, said the girl, "and I have 9 years' experience." The stench was oppressive. Pitt de Trois was afraid it would cling to his suit. "Have you started using drugs yet?" he said. "No," said the girl. "Are you pregnant?" "No," said the girl. The assistant didn't say anything for a few seconds. He really didn't want to come back here more often than was necessary. "What is your name?" he said. "Nombeko," said the girl. "Nombeko what?" "Mayeki, I think." Good Lord, they didn't even know their own names. "Then I suppose you've got the job, if you can stay sober," said the assistant. "I can," said the girl. "Good." Then the assistant turned to the dismissed manager. "We said 3 months' pay for 3 candidates, so 1 month for 1 candidate, minus 1 month because you couldn't manage to find anything other than a 12-year-old. 14, said the girl. Pitt de Trois didn't say goodbye when he left, with his bodyguard 2 steps behind him. The girl, who had just become her own boss's boss, thanked him for his help and said that he was immediately reinstated as her right-hand man. "But what about Pitt de Trois?" said her former boss. "We'll just change your name. I'm sure the assistant can't tell one black from the next," said the 14-year-old, who looked 12. The newly appointed manager of latrine emptying in Soweto Sector B had never had the chance to go to school. This was because her mother had had other priorities, but also because the girl had been born in South Africa, of all countries. Furthermore, she was born in the early 1960s, when the political leaders were of the opinion that children like Nombeko didn't count. The Prime Minister at the time made a name for himself by asking rhetorically why the blacks should go to school when they weren't good for anything but carrying wood and water. In principle, he was wrong, because Nombeko carried shit, not wood or water. Yet there was no reason to believe that the tiny girl would grow up to socialize with kings and presidents, or to strike fear into nations, or to influence the development of the world in general. If, that is, she hadn't been the person she was. But of course, she was. Among many other things, she was a hard-working child. Even as a 5-year-old, she carried latrine barrels as big as she was. By emptying the latrine barrels, she earned exactly the amount of money her mother needed in order to ask her daughter to buy a bottle of thinner each day. Her mother took the bottle with a "Thank you, dear girl," unscrewed the lid, and began to dull the never-ending pain that came with the inability to give oneself or one's child a future. Nombeko's dad hadn't been in the vicinity of his daughter since 20 minutes after the fertilization. As Nombeko got older, she was able to empty more latrine barrels each day, and the money was enough to buy more than just thinner. Thus, her mum could supplement the solvent with pills and booze. But the girl, who realized that things couldn't go on this way, told her mother that she had to choose between quitting or dying. Her mum nodded in understanding. The funeral was well attended. At the time, there were plenty of people in Soweto who primarily devoted themselves to 2 things: slowly killing themselves and saying a final farewell to those who had just succeeded in that endeavor. Nombeko's mum died when the girl was 10 years old, and as mentioned earlier, there was no dad available. The girl considered taking over where her mum had left off, chemically building herself a permanent shield against reality. But when she received her first paycheck after her mother's death, she decided to buy something to eat instead, and when her hunger was alleviated, she looked around and said, "What am I doing here?" At the same time, she realized that she didn't have any immediate alternatives. 10-year-old illiterates were not the prime candidates on the South African